The Journey. My name is Kevin Polky, and I am the host of The Journey. Uh, this time of year, as we wrap up the calendar year and begin to look into the upcoming year, I think it's a perfect time to pause in the midst of all the busyness of the Christmas season. Um, Wonderful times to get together with family and friends, and being able to spend time uh, with old traditions with those family and friends, as well as experimenting and creating new traditions. I also think, especially here, uh, in this part of the world, uh, as busy as everything is, there is also a natural aspect of the days are longer, the nights are longer, the days are shorter. With the winter solstice just happening, um, with the weather turning colder, less activities outside. I think that there's a time for stillness, a time for being able to, even though there's all these expectations and this big push um, for the holidays, how do we give ourselves permission to pause, reflect through some grounding exercises, and just being able to kind of recalibrate our mind as well as our bodies. So I want to share with you, just recently, something that I was able to do. Um, it was a busy weekend that we had just wrapped up with Sierra's graduation ceremony. Um, it was kind of a weird scenario. She wasn't able to have a ceremony because of the pandemic for her undergraduate degree. The way that her graduation classes or graduate classes were, that she ended up technically being done with school at the end of August. But as those summer semester ended, they only do a graduation ceremony in December, as well as in May for the spring classes. So she opted to go through the ceremony just the other day, and as important as that was ceremonially for her to do, there was an element of it being a little bit anticlimactic, meaning she had already received her degree in August. She'd already been working full time since then, as a counselor and at one of the schools that we have a contract with, as well as seeing clients in the office. Um, and because she did her classes online, um, she didn't have the connection with the other students or even the other professors that she was observing other students having around her. Had an opportunity to watch that and watch that ceremony and be proud of her as she went through that process of not only undergraduate school, getting her bachelor's of social work, and then going right into getting her master's, and the stuff that she has learned along the way, and beginning to develop her own style and own niche of providing counseling primarily for younger children and young adults. And then that evening, we had people over to our house for our annual one aspect of our Christmas walk, and we had our part at our house, and then the next day we went to church, and we then proceeded to do the other houses. So again, as I mentioned, it was a busy weekend, but I woke up on the Monday morning and was able to reflect, um, in the midst of listening to my body and stretching and doing some exercises for flexibility and some mobility and some core strength, I was able to quiet myself and just be able to reflect on the past weekend as well as the previous weeks. I think this finding out what are those different tools that work for you to be able to slow your mind down, to be able to be tuned in with what is going on with your body. Where are certain areas more tense? Where are certain areas holding that energy? For me, it is through a series of doing stretches and core movements to help my alignment of my spine and release those muscles really is the first part that allows me um, to get into that space where I can reflect. And then using a combination of tapping exercises and breathing exercises, then again slows things down so that I can just be able to be in that state of reflection. For me, this state of reflection is also closely connected to my God space, to um, being able to be in the presence of God. I I do, without a doubt, believe that for me and my understanding of God, that He, for lack of a better words of describing, He is always available and around me. It's me who is not. It's me who is distracted by some type of either obstacle or some type of thing that I may need to be doing that's on my agenda, or some other thing that I'm going from point A to point B. It's only when I slow down and are able to reflect. Now, sometimes that is easier to do if I'm in the presence of a sacred space, organized by someone else, such as a church ceremony or some type of spiritual or religious ceremony. But I know that I can't rely only on that to get me into that space. That I have to create these sacred spaces and sacred rituals in my own house, in my own office, in my own car, that I need to be able to create those spaces so that it isn't just once a week or whenever I happen to visit or go to that building or that particular space. So I know that I need that much more often than just one time. And even though it may have initially started in my life out of some sense of maybe obligation, um, maybe even there was fear or concern that was originally tied into that obligation. Now I know that it's more out of being able to do that so that I can be in that grounded space where I can then uh, respond to situations instead of reacting to situations. That I have an abundance more ability to see and abundance more choices on what to do, or maybe to not do anything at all, to not respond. Because sometimes we need to not respond, need to have more information come in, focusing on more on the curiosity and the question versus falling into the temptation of thinking that I need to have a conclusion or an answer. I think also at this time period, it is the breakup of our normal weekly routine and being able to be intentional to not only reflect on what was from the previous year, but what would we like to be able to do and be intentional about the upcoming year. So I invite you into, um, even if it is initially adopting someone else's exercises to use, um, to be able to start experimenting and being curious about different ways of being able to um, ground yourself and getting out of your head and your thinking, and allow yourself to be able to mindfully focus on your breathing, on being grounded and centered, and then being curious with your thinking versus reacting and responding in a fearful way to the thoughts that happen. As we venture into a transition into the new calendar year, um, I invite you into this process of how can we be more intentional about our quiet time, more intentional about being um, in tune with our bodies as well as our mind, and then being able to be in that sacred space, which I refer to as my God space, so that I can hear that small voice that is maybe difficult to hear if I don't quiet myself to hear the whisper or the nudging of it. As always, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening and sharing this particular this reflections that we have as we move into the new calendar year. We are going to be looking at having additional guests come on and more reflections as we go into the 2023 year. Um, as always, I appreciate you being here and look forward to being with you next week.